I don't know if you have noticed, today I'm not alone. I'm with Kim McClain. I met Kim McClain when she was at the San Diego airport. Kim McClain has long experience, more than 15 years experience with innovation projects and bringing innovation to reality, focusing a lot with data-driven approaches and bringing technology mainly to airports, but as well as smart cities. Kim, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that welcome, Georgios. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. As you said, in my background, I've got over 15 years in the innovation and incubation space. I've really been focusing on hybrid technologies and how we can apply new data sources to decision intelligence for a lot of the public services spaces, connecting airports to smart cities, ports, and just really driving the interconnectivity between passenger experience, operational efficiency, much needed revenue, and just tying it all together. And as Georgios mentioned, when I was in San Diego, I was manager of the innovation lab there. And we had put out an opportunity request to companies to come in and share with us their ideas for, at the time, it was really just passenger experience innovations. And as we made our way through the lab, I was really, really impressed with the technology that Ariadne was coming out with, because I saw opportunities to extend it beyond just that passenger experience. And I was nerding out over all the things we could do with the data. And I was so excited and saying, like, we could tie it to this operations team. We could tie it to these new things we're doing with a new terminal build. We can use this information to track passenger movement and understand how we're going to shape our new infrastructure. And so that really led to this long-term partnership that we've had. And I think the tech is really what sold me on why this is important for the airport space. So
now you have increased expectations. I hope my presentation, everybody. So let's move on a little bit the information about Ariadne, because people don't know it. Sorry if it is a little bit boring. It's technical, but just to know what we do and how we do it, especially how we do it, because this is the big differentiation for us. So we assume that a phone, everybody carries a phone in today's life. Our phones, even in airplane mode, they are emitting signals. So what we do is we sense those signals, and we can estimate the distance from the emission of the signal. By estimating the distance from multiple angles, from multiple locations, we can multilaterate the source, triangulate the source of emission, so which is the location of the phone, of course. This we can do either with our own hardware. I have one here to show you. Or, good news, we may not need hardware at all. We can use existing infrastructure which is located at the airport. And today we have airports. Also, San Diego is one where we support their infrastructure, so that it's a pure software solution in the end, which is much easier to install, but nothing can stop us in general. So if the hardware doesn't support, or the hardware is not in place, or you need a hybrid solution, we may install the hardware and use existing hardware. This adds a lot of advantages against the existing solution. I have a little bit comparison with competition now. So for when we see ourselves against competitors, for example, camera solutions, which is for me the biggest competitor technology, our solution, it can cover much bigger area. It can cover 20 times larger areas than a camera solution can cover. And think about, in a camera, I can just take a small piece of paper and I can block it and you can see nothing. But the signals that are emitted by the phones can penetrate even thick walls. The solution on tracking, it is 3 times more accurate than cameras also. So we can track a location even to up to 30 centimeters accurate. And on counting, because we count trajectories and not just how many people pass one line, it is much more accurate. It is we have seen obtaining consistently 95% accuracy versus on the 85% accuracy if you consider also the double counting that cameras struggle with. It has much better coverage and adoption than SDK solutions. So solutions that they mine data from the phones. We are not doing this. We are not mining data from the phones. You don't need a consent. It's a passive solution. And it has much higher adoption than applications. And of course, it has much higher adoption than Wi-Fi solutions. So you don't need to be connected on Wi-Fi. You don't even need to have your Wi-Fi on. We can still track you. It's an anonymous solution. You don't have to be afraid of anything. It's as passive as a camera. We are not focusing only on airports. We are focusing on 4 verticals. We are focusing also on retail. We are focusing on shopping centers and smart cities. We are active in more than 20 countries, and we are active in more than 200 locations, and have tracked more than 700 million trajectories. And the small pitch for an airport is we approach it from queuing times, right? Because who likes queuing times? Who likes being queued in an airport? And practically, if you visit an airport, you can do 3 things. One is you can be queuing in security area, you can be waiting at the gate, or you can do the more interesting stuff, which is dwelling at the commercial area, the stores, going for a coffee, going for a lunch or dinner, a drink, or buying a souvenir for your family. We are helping you to reduce the 2 boring parts with the security queues and the waiting at the gate, and increase the dwelling, the browsing, the time that people and passengers spend in the stores. Whether you are a passenger or the airport, this is where you want to spend your time, to be honest. Or this is how I feel also as a passenger, personally. How we do that? We do it by, first, we communicate queue times to the passengers. Second, we alert employees when queue times exceed certain thresholds. Third, we reroute passengers through our navigation so that queue times will not occur, they will start reducing. So we can reroute somebody from a different security area when we see that queue times are lower in the security area. And how we increase the dwell time by making things discoverable through our indoor navigation. So you can look for the nearest Starbucks, for example, and be navigated there with the blue dot navigation. You get push notification, so you pass by Starbucks, you are in a loyalty program of Starbucks, you get a notification, and we evaluate the visual merchandising. We evaluate if there are posters, if there are to reroute traffic, we can evaluate on how well these have performed. Why all of these things are important? Because we have measured that for every 1 minute that we increase the dwell time of passengers, so the interesting time, the airport generates $54,000 more in non-aeronautical revenue, which is considerable. Of course, this is not the only challenge that airports have, and we will speak for more. And Kim is with me. It's better to let Kim introduce problems that airports have today. Kim?
Yeah. It's so interesting to talk through some of the queuing challenges. I know that just operationally, that's consistently been such a challenge. Worked in airports, small local municipality airports, the largest ones in the country, and at every level, small, medium, or large, queuing comes up as one of the biggest conversations. Roadblocks and moving people through as quickly and as efficiently as possible. There's always a lot of conversation around how do we help passengers understand that, this space is full, you can come over to another checkpoint and come through. Want to move them through security as quickly as possible. And I know I'm like the choir right now to this group. It's not news, right? This is something we've been talking about for a long, long time. And for us, experience that I've had before is once we get them through security, then how do we track them? Because on a previous slide, you were looking at some of the other competitive systems, cameras and things like that. They a lot of times are just focused straight down. A lot of systems in place in the other airports where you're looking straight down at people, or you can track just in one little space, and getting those systems to talk together so that we understand what happens after security. How do we manage time. How do we move people to the areas where we want them to go, other than watching cameras or having people there on foot? Management is another big part of this operational challenge, where if we don't know where the big pushes are coming for restrooms or gate holds that have become messy, the whole operational efficiency part kind of falls apart. And that impacts the passenger experience, which I think a lot of times can kind of by the wayside in terms of where we put our efforts, because operations is key, safety is key. If movement is key, these are the things we pay attention to first. Passenger experience can take a hit. If we're able to focus on where we direct those passengers and how we are mapping their movement, actually improves their wayfinding. It improves their purchases in the space. And then we can use all that information, that data. This is what we did at San Diego. We used the paths that we were able to see through Ariadne's system to talk to our architectural teams in the process, right when we were talking about building a new terminal. And we said, hey, here's this data. We're finding that passengers are going to A, B, and C. We didn't really know that before. And here's how much time they're spending in that space. So we as an airport can adjust where we send our management people. We can adjust where we're recommending new restaurants in this new infrastructure build. I think the data really tied into all three of these key challenges of operational issues, how we address passenger experience, and then how we're using, how we're addressing our future infrastructure changes. And I loved that we could kind of tell this together with like one system. Because I think we're going to talk a little bit in the future about how much data there is across all these systems. And it's really difficult to try to piece them together and find one way to address all of these industry challenges. And I just really felt like Ariadne's system did that. Sorry, Georgios, I can wax poetic if you let me.
Thank you, Kim. You have a very good introduction for my next slide, by the way, because it wasn't planned also. And I have also a couple of scenarios like the ones you mentioned to present. So that is a very good introduction for my next slide, because I don't want to argue that airports don't have enough data, as you also mentioned. I want to argue that airports maybe have too much data, but the way this data communicate, so you have air traffic data, you have flight operations data, you have schedules, you have weather data, you have parking data, you have throughout everything that is moving in an airport, there is a sensor that records data practically. The problem is how this data communicate with each other, how these data are connected to each other. And discussions I have so far, it seems that these data are not communicated. So they are the table with bus scans there. There's a table with traces from the stores inside the airport, and this cannot come together. The thing from this perspective, the following example. You have a passenger arriving with a car, leaving the car in the parking, taking the shuttle from the parking to the airport, leaving the shuttle. There is now an entry in a parking database about the passenger. Now the passenger enters in the airport, comes in contact with a video advertisement with a monitor. There is an entry now of the advertisement that was displayed in this monitor. The passenger goes to check in or to give the bag. There is another entry in another database, in another table. Security. There is some queuing time associated with this time that the passenger went through security. And to the food court, buy something, and now there is a purchase in the food court. And then finally the passenger goes to the gate, and there is a flight information here. So my argument is that this is the key for connecting all of these databases, connecting all of these sources of information.
This was actually a huge driver for us. One of the biggest challenges is that we do have a million systems out there, different kinds of data, and none of them talk together. We can develop APIs to try to connect them, but all of them have their own reporting systems, and they usually don't sit within the same department within the airport. So even if one group is looking at sales from food purchase, it's a completely different group who's understanding how many people went through, checkpoint 3 or what have you. And there was no real way to analyze the impacts of the data across all those different systems and to see how the passenger movement from curb to gate and back and forth post security connected to all those different systems. And so mapping something like this and seeing all those touch points come together, we were able to pull in data from the other systems and say, actually, I need to grab data from our concessionaires because I'm finding an anomaly in this space. So let's dig into that and figure out why. Just really impactful for us to be able to make, as I said, like discussions or conversations with our concessionaires based on these findings. And we just thought it was really cool. It's cool to see the data movement of the people in your space when you spend all day in the terminal anyway. So
I want to encourage also, if you have questions, feel free to write on the chat to make it as interactive as possible. We will have also Q&A in the end, but you don't need to wait for the end. Also, if you have, in case you want to ask something, interrupt in any time. Now, I know the most common question that comes after that is this compliant with the privacy regulations? Not only European Union, there are other privacy regulations today, also in California. In order to San Diego, there is also the Consumer Privacy Act that we had to go through. There is also in China, there is also in Singapore, Canada, there is other in South Africa, there is other privacy initiatives today. And my answer is very explicit because the data provide is anonymous, and this is not me who says it. This is from the Data Protection Authority of Bavaria here in Germany, for example, who have reviewed all of our data, all of our code base, our entire code base, and they gave us an opinion from their side. And this is not the last thing we did, because we also asked the big certification agency to audit us, and they gave us also their opinion, which is that all is anonymous. So by being anonymous means we don't even fall into the privacy regulations. So now I will tell you what we will present to you during this webinar. First, we will on how airports can benefit by transiting passengers that they just are there to take another flight. Whether there's a benefit from airports having more passengers, if the times affect airport, which is net revenue for the airport, if patterns of passengers can give us information about other things like flight information, whether we can optimize costs by following more data-driven approaches, and whether we can increase the experience of passengers without a lot of resources in a more cost-effective way. So first, benefit from passengers. What we enable through the data with Ariadne is first to see how the people flow throughout the airport. This is useful because it enables us to quantify how passengers are moving between the areas in an airport. So, for example, take an example here. I have gate 44, gate 49. So now I see there is 3% of passengers who are transiting between those two gates. And I see transit time, 82 minutes, which is worrying. But if I look how the passengers are flowing, you will see that most of the passengers are going for their dinner in Phil's barbecue. So now 82 minutes is not that bad. It's also an opportunity for the airport to generate revenue. Maybe we can think on how can we have more passengers following the same pattern by, for example, advertising Phil's barbecue in gate or taking other actions.
Georgios, if I can jump in, what you just mentioned about advertising was a kind of a key. I feel like everything I say is a key driver, so mute me if it gets annoying, but that was something that we didn't think about when we first started implementing Ariadne, but over time, what we discovered was we were able to identify, just even from this kind of people who go to a particular location also have a tendency to be, these gates, or they went to this particular other store beforehand. Like we could see those flows. And at macro level, when you've got tens of thousands of people making similar movement patterns, we adjusted where we were putting some of our internal marketing. So we knew because of this mapping that we should be putting, for example, Bill's Barbecue partway back on this terminal on, this other store, because we now knew their path of movement. And so we could encourage more people to go to different areas based on other kind of that they were consistently making throughout the terminals. And so we were able to change up our advertising, and I mean, much money comes from advertising. So it kind of fed into us in a very positive way. We could see movement in areas that we wanted to move people. And then we got the returns from the advertising dollars. So it was really a good shift for us.
Another that easy to detect without data, and I don't know, maybe it's also easy to detect without Ariadne. But as pattern in the data is so let's answer the question once and for all: if more passengers bring more revenue, because it seems to me that more passengers don't mean necessarily more revenue. There is an increasing pattern. So here you see the non-aeronautical revenue versus the passengers, and but all of this there is this moment where the airport doesn't have so many passengers, but there is high revenue as moments with more passengers. On the other hand, if you look at the dwell time again, and this is why I'm insisting so much on dwell time, if we look at the time that passengers spend in the airport browsing in the stores after the security, before the gate, you see a much stronger correlation. So the longer the passengers spend at the airport, the more revenue, the non-aeronautical revenue the airport generates. This is 10 times higher correlation than the number of passengers. So what they say quality versus quantity. It seems that there is an explicit answer here.
Yeah, I know the thing. Yeah. I do. One of the things I've talked to many reports about is we talk about the type of passenger. Business travelers, and they pretty much know where they're going. They have their whole route down to the minute. They through security, they hit their one spot for their coffee, they go to their gate or they go to the business lounge and they park and they stay there. And they don't walk around because they know their whole process. And your leisure passengers, and they tend to be the ones who rove around and do some shopping. So the question is, how do we increase revenue across all those different passenger types? Are they here for a short layover? Are they really just, the O&D airport, so they're just starting here and taking off? And how do you address all those different groups? And I think you shared an earlier slide, a study from Glasgow that showed that even to increase the dwell time by even 1 minute, it has a dramatic impact on revenue to the airport. And even those business travelers, if we can move them through faster, if we can share a little bit more information with them, if we can hit them with messaging that is different from what they're used to seeing, because we now know patterns of movement through the space, we encourage a little bit more time spent in the terminal during that dwell time, and that naturally translates over to revenue. And we've been able to track that by connecting sales data to this system. So it's really impactful.
$54,000 revenue. It's considerable, really. Then there is another question that it was easy to be answered with our data, is the effect that the queue times have in the concessionaires. So because there are queue times there as well. And we see this interesting pattern where we have two shops. They sell almost exactly the same products. I'll reveal the names because one is more innovative than the other, and maybe it's not good advertisement for the less innovative shop. and I will explain what I mean. You see here 18 minutes. This is the far maximum queue time that you may have, versus 12 minutes, the far maximum queue time you have on the second concessionaire. And you see the impact on the revenue. So the B with a much lower waiting times, 44% lower waiting time, they have 55%, they generate 55% more revenue with the same prices, the same products almost. The difference is that retailer A has the traditional queues for ordering and paying, while retailer B has this ordering kiosks. We are not selling self-ordering kiosks. We are a business. It's just something to see, and nice to report.
Yeah, I know a lot of concessionaires, it depends on the airport really, and the model that you've set up with your agreement with concessionaires, but sometimes you see the sales data and maybe not much else, especially if they're self-reporting, and connecting, that they're sharing with the airport to the data that you have in terms of flow through security and passenger numbers per flights. There's a gap really in understanding what happens between where you've tracked them at security and then when they leave at the gate. And this system really kind of connects that, and you can track the times of queuing at your different concessionaires outside the space, and then tie that to other sales, tie it to the other operational needs in like strooms and gate holds, and it kind of connects to there. And so this really felt to me like the puzzle piece that fit in between all those other data points.
Next is a question whether by just monitoring passenger behavior, we can get insight about the flight, for example. And I have a simple example here where we have with this transparent green, the scheduled departure time, with the green, time that appears to have a flight really departed, because we see that this is the time that the passengers, the red line is the number of passengers at the gate, dropped. So this is the time that there is a drop on the passengers. So probably this flight was delayed by 14 minutes. This was delayed by 22 minutes. This was delayed by 17 minutes. And only this was on time. So this is a very side effect of our solution. You can monitor the quality that airlines provide to the passengers by just looking how the passengers behave, right? And another thing you can see is passengers start arriving at the gate. So you can see 30 minutes before departure, most passengers have already arrived at the gate, which is nice side effects that you can have using our service. And this is why so now you can connect flight information to waiting times to by how much their experience affected. I will. The next use case is about optimizing of bathroom, the cleaning in bathrooms, using data-driven approaches. It is a big thing, because if normally how the airport seem to this is by having static intervals, cleaning the bathrooms every 1.5 hours, 30 minutes, or 1 hour, whatever is fits to the case. But you see the data. So having a data-driven solution, you can have an alert. So there is more than 100 people visited already this bathroom. So maybe it's time to clean it, because time doesn't make the bathrooms dirty, people do. So by just counting the people in the bathroom, now we can set up more dense frequencies when we have more passengers using the bathroom, and less dense when not so much use of the bathrooms. By this, we have seen easily 25% cost savings. And if you calculate $500,000 to $1 million dollar costs for the cleaning the bathroom, it's considerable savings from doing nothing. The behavior, the passenger experience is not affected at all. The passenger gets the same clean bathroom. The only thing you change is the frequencies to adapt to the number of passengers.
Yeah, I would amend that a little bit, Georgios, and say, we always talk a lot about the importance of bringing revenue back to the airport in any kind of system that's been implemented, and how it's going to lead to either direct revenue or sales or indirect revenue through the cost savings, which you just mentioned, the operational efficiency part here. But there's also kind of the touch on it, the passenger experience part, which is if you're able to tell your teams, if they can get an alert that says, hey, this bathroom is getting hit hard, it's probably, they go clean it, change out all the things that need changed out. And so that bathroom is cleaner. That ends up reducing calls to your customer service teams. You get fewer cranky emails. You get fewer, about this bathroom was terrible, I'm never flying this airport again. And that matters because over time, if a person has an opportunity to fly through this airport or that airport on their layover, or they're, either two O&D airports, and they had consistent bad experiences in one, they're going to choose the other. So it does translate, into just overall better experience, and in some cases, actual revenue, when you make adjustments to your facilities in this way. People just like clean bathrooms.
This is another idea you give me now is we should correlate our information. Maybe this is for the next webinar to see how passenger use is correlated to the Google reviews for the airport. There will be something, or net promoter score also, right? Because you have all airports that see you have this bathroom, so volumes definitely relate to the volumes of passengers using the bathroom. The second one is if we can increase the experience of passengers through not considerable costs. This is something we provided to San Diego Airport, and I'm sure when I see pricing out there from competitive solutions. So you don't have to bankrupt the airport to provide, for example, a wayfinding solution in the monitors and in the Blue Dot. So you have an application that provides navigation to the passengers in a more seamless way, so that you have much higher adoption. We measure this, and we have 200 times more adoption than an application that provides navigation can have. How it works is we have this monitor. Passengers can go there and they can look for wayfinding, so they won't look for their gate. And I don't know if you notice in the monitor, you see there is a QR code that appears, and the passenger can scan this QR code and they can get this route on their phone. And if we get their consent, they can obtain back the location from Ariadne, so they can be navigated. So it's not a one-directional solution like a camera where it's only tracking. We can also have it bi-directional. You can also send the location back to the passenger if they wish to be navigated.
You mentioned at the beginning not spending, not bank installing a bunch of wayfinding. It's been 12 years now. I was working with a small airport in the Midwest, and their challenge at the time was that they had installed these wayfinding kiosks that were over $500,000 and was using them. No one wanted to walk up, right, and interact with the wayfinding solution. But they also don't look at signs. I mean, it's me how passengers just absolutely do not read signs. And so they go up to anybody they can grab and they say, how do I find this or that or whatever? And that most passengers these days, they don't want to interact with a live person. They want to be given the information on their phone so they can just kind of stay there and in their own bubble in an airport space. And so it's like, how can we get them to understand a little bit more about what's around them? Because if we're able to increase their dwell time, we can encourage them to just peek around the corner, right? Like what's around the corner, what store is around the corner that you can get to in 2 minutes. You've got 28 minutes until your flight. And so it's from the anxiety of feeling like I have to stay at my gate because my flight's going to board. Now at their fingertips, they know exactly where they can go. And I know a lot of airports have systems like this. This doesn't require that additional app or download or agreement. And then connect back into all the other data points that you're collecting about passenger movement throughout the space. So it's a really good, I think, two-way interaction. Passengers, giving them what they want from wayfinding, getting more data for the airports to, make their own infrastructures.
This is you present better than me, Kim, and because you did more than me probably. And also, I had a discussion with an airport in the US, a very busy airport, that they were desperate for a wayfinding, a navigation solution, not only a wayfinding, but a solution that people can look on their phone because they are afraid to go to the monitors because I don't know, they're afraid they will be humiliated or something if they use the monitors. So they want so it will be used on the phone, but you will not do anything because all their passengers in that particular airport told me they have a lot of they don't know how to install applications, and this navigation feature comes to your phone by the press of a button. So it's a very to be used. My first is here, of course, while being in San Diego Airport. As I mentioned, we don't work only with airports. We work also with retailers such as IKEA that we help to increase the revenue from products and better of passengers, which is very similar to what we do in duty free also areas, because in duty free also you want to have passengers going through all products, than what IKEA is doing practically. So we, in general, our customers love what we do. They always come and give us very good feedback. Our vision is not simply providing analytics. And why is this important? Because with these solutions, data solutions, the better they become, exponentially more people are using them. Think about geospatial data, right? Most of the people here, attendees, know what I'm talking about. They used only by cartographers back in the time. Then GPS came, and now everybody with a phone is using spatial data, right? And then with more fusion-oriented solutions, and we have suddenly billions of users using spatial data, geospatial services, right? Our approach brings the next order of magnitude in accuracy, and what we can enable is more than just providing data and navigating. We can enabling autonomous wheelchairs for passengers. Imagine augmented reality. Imagine autonomous robots for cleaning, or drones for security use cases inside the airport. All of these use cases, they don't exist today because they require a precise location. That is the presentation, and please feel free to ask a question and make some here, or I don't know.
Yeah, while we wait for any to come in, I just kind of want to share. I know we missed a couple of the attendees at the beginning as people were coming in, and I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience as a side user of Ariadne, how we were able to use some of the data that went way far beyond just tracking queuing and things like this. When we were actually still, Georgios, in the innovation lab, and I was seeing some of the data that was coming out, and I was able to pull these passenger flows and really show the mapping of it's from curb to gate. And at the time, this was a couple of years ago, we were in the midst of having conversations with architects, how we were going to build out the new T1, Terminal 1. So I don't know if any of the people on the call have been flying through San Diego lately, but as you know, anytime an airport is under construction, it's a bit of a mess. But we were able to pull that data, share it with the architects, because they were asking us, do you have demographic data on the passengers who are going through your space and how they move? And I'd say yes. And I shared this data with them. And they actually made adjustments to how they were designing some of the terminal flows because of what we were able to show them in terms of how our people were moving. And really influential for us to have that data, because this is stuff that gets set in stone, and we want to get it right. And so that was kind of one of it. And then separately, we had been having other conversations with the city of San Diego, because they're looking at things like bus routes and potential other changes to their transit systems in the city as it related to coming to the airport, because the airport in San Diego is like right downtown. And so we could share with them information about our flows, our curb information, passengers at the curb and where they were coming in. And it allowed them to connect about where their bus stops were and where that transit space was going to be located after the terminal redesigns. So we really kind of data and expanded it beyond just what was happening within our terminal, and connected it to the city and made it much more usable to all the passengers in our space. And I just see this as an opportunity to connect to all those different systems that are responsible for everything from advertising, locations, concessions, locations, operational, where we're putting all of our management, how we're controlling flows and people safe within the space when there's too many people in a particular area and we really have to move them out. And then even looking beyond just the terminal itself, and saying, how do we connect this data to what we're sharing with the city? And so I find it as being one of those really robust systems that gives you the information you need to connect to everything else that you've got data within your airport, and find those insights that are going to be, I hate the jargon, actionable, but that's kind of what it is. It actually gives you information that you can connect to all the other systems and say, now I see where the gap is. Now I'm able to actually do something about it. And we saw real revenue changes from that, which is really meaningful. Like I said, Georgios, if you let me wax poetic, I'll just keep going and going.
Also, they are telling me that we have also private questions, and the two most common, which is pricing and so for regarding pricing, is send us a floor plan to prepare a price for the airport, but it's a cost efficient solution, as we mentioned, is not the cost comparable to LiDAR and solutions which are heavy on infrastructure. And the second is for the, you also mentioned it, Tim, that we make things comparable, because a LiDAR or an optical sensor is sensitive on counting. But signals emitted by the phones, they are uniformly distributed on space. So wherever we end up sensing them, we compare things. Is there any question? Is there any other question?
I don't see any others in the chat.
Somebody has to do the start like last time, and then people don't stop asking. Yeah, Joanna was the brave one.
Yeah.
You want to go on? Joanna, with your, is it voice muted or something? No. Yeah. You can ask your question.
Oh, she doesn't have access to the mic. 1 second, we'll get that tech sorted out. Well, I think while we sort out the mic issue, there was a question in the chat.
Okay. Maybe you can check again to unmute, Joanna.
I want to ask, you were asked if there are use cases outside of sort of the services. Is the hidden benefits that anyone has changed the way organizations see the service? Are you meaning, out of queue times and that kind of thing, or did you have something specific that you're interested in, like outside of the terminal?
Well, no. So for me, right, I look at, and I'm with Austin Bergstrom International Airport, Kim. So how are you doing today? I think your relationship with Rick Belliati, who's kind of my mentor. So he's awesome, and he's really allowed me the opportunity to kind of really make AUS. But I hear it's the standard use cases that we're tracking. If we want to manage the queues, but we bring up the construction piece and how it's beneficial to them. From what are use cases that are outside the norm, because it's I was very interested in innovation and bringing innovation to AUS. There's something more for they get excited about other than facilities, because we feel like there are so many additional enhancements or additional resources that are available. So if I want to sell the product to them that way, if I want to sell the benefit, knowing that there are other avenues, how do I use this to say, they do this, and I know that we're doing this already, but the additional advantage would be ABCD, or we use this, like you said, to instruction, and that's kind of thing I'm looking for. For me, I push anything like this or this particular narrative. Additionally, with safety. So, how does this enhance the safety feature for our organization, or how can we use this to best implement a safety strategy as we move forward? So, I think that's why my question was more: is there anybody here, or do you have a particular way that this can be viewed in addition to this normal strategy that everyone is kind of adhering to?
Yeah, actually jump in. So first, Rick was actually part of, it's funny, Rick was part of the innovation lab when we came through, and I think he sees the value in this kind of innovation. And going just the queues and operational facilities and things like that, I believe Austin is in the process of a design. I know there's going to be some construction coming up, infrastructure to some of that space. And I really see this as so deeply impactful to that kind of design planning, because without it, you're really flying blind. And what happens is architects have a tendency, because they don't have any other data, they have a tendency to design based on just kind of history check of the people who've been at an airport for, years. And the people are operating on limited data. And so that means the information you're able to give the architects is limited. And it's not the whole picture. It's not a broad view lens that connects everything, every system, and movement within your airport, because this can also work behind security lines. So in the secure area where your employees are moving. So I know we focused a lot on kind of the base, but you can also have this in your all of the luggage is going. You can track movement outside of the terminal space on the tarmac. So you can keep track of employees. If anybody is not in a safe zone, you can be alerted that, hey, nobody's supposed to be in this area. We've detected movement in this area. So the safety component there. And I also, we've had conversations around, so many airports are looking at eVTOL, a vertical takeoff. And how do you combine data systems to just movement of materials, of people? Is it safe for this thing to land, area that shouldn't be? And I think this can connect to a lot of those different future elements, especially with cities like, I know Cincinnati was looking at the bots that are going back and forth. So all of this can you keep people safe, you can keep things moving forward, and you can, I think of what's coming in the future and preemptively plan for that based on the data that you've got in hand now. I don't know if that answers some of your question, but I see it definitely expanding beyond just passenger queues.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's a great advantage to, systems. Like I said, Georgios and I've had some pretty in-depth conversations about, what we're looking at, and we're having this meeting and discussing it. That just, like I said, it's always, every different challenges, but I think when we have these types of groups, it's also beneficial to identify the non-normal type use cases, because I think those also can on additional opportunities. And I think that's kind of what I'm looking for here. But I do appreciate it. And I'll be reaching out to you soon, I know for a fact.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. There are also questions on the chat that I text, and I will read now very fast. Group size. So if a family comes, we will also report the group size, so you will know what group you should expect. But the question goes also to the members of family that don't carry phones. So I put a little bit earlier the sensor, and if, for example, you use this sensor, this is a LiDAR, so you also get counting by optical means. So it's not just signals made by phone, it's a fusion of sensors. So they don't carry phone, they will be only perceived by LiDAR. And I can also show you, if you in a private discussion, the accuracy of the fusion of both, which is exponential increases, is dramatically increases. And there's another question for the technologies for counting. So I listed it already. Sensor is signals made by phones, which is the main technology we use. And then a supportive technology with the LiDAR. And it is a supportive technology because with the LiDAR, as we said during the webinar, is not the most reliable solution. And if you question now, if you can predict the next steps of passengers, there is two ways now. One is we can forecast the amount of passengers for every hour for the entire next week. But we have also done, and this also we also present in a private, more personal discussion, because we don't want to give away so many secrets of our secret sauce here. But we can also assign probabilities for what is the next place you're going to visit, given your historical places that you have visited in the airport. And if carrying multiple phones, we don't count phones, we count trajectories. So even if you carry 7 phones, you are still one trajectory. So we report one trajectory. If you don't carry phone, as I mentioned, it will be only perceived by the LiDAR. Yes, we can integrate with every system. I think you can just tell me the system, and we have an integration done already that we can describe, we can present you. We can integrate with any system. So practically saving you costs also from subscribing to other systems for visualization and data consumption.
Yeah. So I know we're a couple minutes over. People might have to jump to some other meetings, but we can always follow up and maybe share out some additional answers to the group, ask after the fact, and share out the presentation as well.
Sure. Yes. Appreciate really the questions. Very good questions. And organize more webinars focusing especially on airports. I promise. So that is the first one of many to come. We are preparing a series. So stay in touch, and we will hear more from us. Feel free also to book a meeting with us, and happy to describe you more. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jim, so much for joining. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, very happy.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Georgios.
Thanks, everyone.